This is the web transmission service of the Royal Canadian Military Institute. On October the 5th, the RCMI held our annual Police Appreciation Night to a full house. Our guest of honour was Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner Thomas Carrique, who spoke on the theme, "Crime Knows No Boundaries."
God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for
It's my pleasure to call on Ontario's Deputy Solicitor General, Mario Di Tommaso.
Good evening. RCMI President Lieutenant Colonel Michael Terry, Commissioner Carrique, RCMP Senior Deputy Commissioner Larkin, Chief Deputy, Chief Van Dyke, head table guests, retired Chiefs Labarge, McGuire, Jolliffe, the Creek family, and honored guests. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce a very short video vignette of Commissioner Thomas Carrique's career in policing. Commissioner Carrique commenced his career in policing with York Regional Police in 1990. At York, he worked in a variety of roles including uniform patrol, criminal investigations, investigative services, traffic, marine, and public order. In this video, there will be a couple of shots of the Commissioner from his time in the mobile support where his duties included surveillance. I'm sure you will pick up on his ability to blend in when you see the healthy mullet that he sported while on this detail. And yes, it is hard to believe that the Commissioner did have a full head of hair at some time. He progressed through the ranks and served his last 8 years as Deputy Chief of Police. As Deputy Chief, he oversaw all three areas of command: the administration branch, the operations branch, and the investigations and support branch. Thomas Carrique became the 15th Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, the second largest police service in Canada, on April 8, 2019. Commissioner Carrique holds a master's degree in leadership and training with a specialty in justice and public safety from Royal Roads University and a certificate in terrorism studies from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. He is a graduate of the National Policing Improvement Agency's International Commanders Program in the United Kingdom and the United States Department of Justice Drug Unit Commanders Academy. He is currently the President of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police and co-chair of the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada National Executive Committee, and also serves on the Board of Directors for the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. He is an appointed member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Division of State and Provincial Police Executive Committee. In addition, he is a member of the Ministry of the Solicitor General's Executive Mental Health Steering Committee, and he co-chairs the Mental Health Collaborative police table. Last year, Commissioner Carrique was inducted into the Special Olympics Ontario Hall of Fame for his leadership and commitment to Ontario's Special Olympics athletes. In the upcoming video, you can judge for yourself his grace in performing Superman dives for the law enforcement torch run polar plunges. On weekends and in the evenings, he can be found in one of Ontario's many communities supporting community events and charities. His dedication to honoring fallen officers and their families is truly inspiring. For 13 years, he has participated and played a leadership role in the Ride to Remember, a 700-kilometer trek from the Ontario Police College to the Canadian Police and Peace Officers Memorial on Parliament Hill. His commitment to the men and women of the Ontario Provincial Police is limitless. Commissioner Carrique is a recipient of the Police Exemplary Service Medal and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. He is also a commander of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces, as well as a serving brother of the Order of St. John Ambulance. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen as we watch the video.
Can you tell us about your leadership journey?
I was afraid you were going to start with that question.
I can skip it and come back.
Yeah, I just, like, I don't know how I would answer that. Like, leadership journey, that's a long, protracted answer, right?
Yeah.
These types of partnerships build greater capacity for the police. A lack of activity at the house, lights on in the basement 24 hours a day.
Alicia's disappearance is suspicious in that it's out of character for her.
So over 200 plants were found in the house. And treat Mr. Hardgrove as armed and dangerous. Enforcement is a last-ditch effort.
And you have a direct impact on community safety.
And thereby enable us to make a difference in our community.
I can tell you that no one is more surprised that I'm standing before you today with this announcement.
I consider it an honor and a privilege to serve the OPP and the citizens of Ontario.
The advice I would offer to somebody that's starting along the leadership journey is that leadership is about responsibility. When we are given the opportunity to lead others, it becomes more about them than it does us.
Thank you for being here for this incredibly important announcement as we address the well-being of our frontline officers.
Do you agree, Commissioner, that our system is broken?
I definitely feel that our system is in desperate need of some very meaningful change that will ensure repeat violent offenders are held accountable and held in custody so they can't further victimize innocent community members and risk the lives of police officers.
The tragic loss of one of our officers who has yet again been murdered, simply selflessly serving his community.
These are the type of legal firearms that we see being used in carjackings, robberies, home invasions, intimidation, extortion, and even murder.
Leadership is about responsibility. Taking responsibility for the work, taking responsibility for our people, taking responsibility for our organization, and taking responsibility for the safety and security of not only our communities, but the province of Ontario.
Adrian, thank you so very much. I know that you have put a lot of time and attention to making this evening happen. Superintendent McDonnell has been singing your praises for the last few months, so thank you so very much. And to our RCMI President, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Clary, thank you for this distinct honor and privilege to be in such a prestigious institution with so many family and friends, and to be recognized for what I feel is just an opportunity to live out a dream come true for me. Deputy Solicitor General Mario DiTommaso, thank you for your very generous introduction, and not only for that, but for the opportunity to lead this great police service. For it was not for your trust and confidence in me, and for you not giving me this opportunity and your ongoing support each and every day, I could not do what I do. So thank you for your leadership. I do have to say though, I'm feeling a little over-supervised tonight. I've got my current boss, the Deputy Solicitor General. I have Chief Eric Jolliffe, my former chief, Chief Armin Labarge, former chief, Superintendent Eugene Carrigan, who not only hired me, but supervised me many times throughout the years. I'm feeling a little bit of an overwatch. It is this group that has provided me the mentorship, the guidance, the development, and the opportunities to be with you here this afternoon. And a team that surrounds me every day, led by Inspector Carrie Van Beek and Superintendent Mike McDonnell, that ensures that we're able to deliver on our commitments to our people and to our communities. And I've been asked to share with you just a little bit about crime having no boundaries across our country. And with that, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a presentation here this evening. And I'd like to start with a piece that was mentioned in the video, and that's bail reform. And the reason I chose to start with bail reform here this evening is because yet again, last week, we saw another police officer, a Toronto police officer, in the execution of his duties, shot. And we are hearing that there are issues associated to one of those offenders being out on bail. Not to compromise an ongoing investigation for which I have no knowledge, Chief Demkew, but I do think it is most appropriate to emphasize the importance of all Canadians remaining adamant that the bail system gets the attention it needs. It is not working. There has been great change through legislation in Bill C-48, which has now identified repeat violent offenders who use weapons in the commission of offenses. They have put in provisions for greater reverse onus requirements, actually requiring the justice or the judge to, in writing, detail how they have considered public safety, which is a huge step forward. There are greater reverse onus requirements for accused charged with offenses related to intimate partner violence, and they've clarified some things around firearm offenses. But our work on this is yet to be done. As police leaders, as community leaders, as citizens of this country, we need to continue to demand greater justice through our bail system. And we see the impacts of a bail system that is not effective. I'm going to ask Nancy McDonald and Heather Pham to just stand for a moment. They are here with us this evening, the President and Vice President of Survivors of Law Enforcement, two of my heroes and two individuals that I feel each and every one of us have an obligation to do our best to ensure their husbands' lives were not lost in vain. They did a job that they were extremely passionate about. They lived a life of purpose, and that was through service with a badge. And Nancy and Heather continue to be a part of our family and support us in the great work that we do. Thank you. This is a powerful slide. This slide tells a story Up till November 2020, we went 10 years without losing an officer. Provincial Constable Vu Pham, Heather's husband, was the last OPP officer to die in the line of duty. 10 years went by with no officer losing their life. Mark Hoving lost his life in 2020 around the same time as Constable Jeffrey Northrup. But when we hit 2022, over 375-day period, so just over 1 year, we had 10 officers in our country murdered. 8 out of those 10 officers were murdered at the hands of an offender with a firearm. We have Chief Van Dyke and Deputy Sutton here with us this evening. They tragically lost 2 of their officers. A very small service to lose 2 officers in one incident. Senior Deputy Commissioner Brian Larkin has already been introduced this evening, but you will also note that 2 RCMP officers were identified on this list. Combined with bail reform, we need to continue to pay attention to the impact that firearms, illicit firearms, are having in our communities. Last year in Ontario, police across this province seized over 1,600 crime guns that had made their way into Canada from the United States. We need to think hard and long about what we do as a nation, because we border a country that firearms are legal. They're easily accessible. And if we think that just changing laws in our own country is going to stop the flow of firearms, we need to think again, because it's going to take a systematic approach of strong legislation, the right amount of accountability where offenders are incarcerated for a period of time for which they cannot continue to offend, and there's actually something that discourages these heinous crimes. And we need to think about solutions to the now emerging trend of 3D printed guns. Every state in the US has their own legislation around firearms. And in those states where they have made handguns illegal or put restrictions on them, the number of 3D printed guns is alarming. And they are just as dangerous as any other manufactured firearms. So this is something that I can assure you that police leaders across this country are turning their minds to. An alarming statistic that I want to share with you that is very seldom spoke about, and I know Deputy Commissioner Larkin is very well aware of it, that when you look internationally, Canada has actually had the fourth highest rate of mass shooting murders through firearms. As a Canadian, I find that alarming. US is first, followed by France, Germany, and then Canada. We need to think about this. We need to think about what legislation as Canadians we want in place to ensure our safety and security, and what type of society we want to live in. Chief Demkew, I think I saw a statistic just earlier this weekend where you have made over 700 arrests for firearm-related offenses already this year, and we're seeing that homicides are on the dramatic increase right across this country as it relates to firearm use. Thank you to your officers who operate in one of the most dangerous environments in this entire country and do it so nobly and professionally. Thank you, Chief. Another important topic that I would really like to just spend a moment on is something that a lot of people are unaware of unless you're deeply entrenched in the policing environment, and that's internet child exploitation. This has become a global epidemic. It has become an issue that is extremely hard to detect and defend against. And when you think at what is at risk, it's our children behind closed doors being victimized by sexual predators that have the internet available to them to perpetrate these crimes. We've seen a dramatic 52% increase internationally in these crimes. And I can assure you that with the support of the province of Ontario and the personal attention of our Deputy Solicitor General, we have been able to increase our capacity through our joint force operation known as the Provincial Internet Child Exploitation. And last year alone, we made 500 arrests of these heinous offenders across this province. All that to say that you've got our commitment that we will continue to do our best. But if you have contact with any young children, as a parent, as a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, please ensure that they are educated around the dangers of technology and the internet, and that they are supervised when they are using these technologies. It is the only way that we can keep our most valuable assets safe. Speaking of assets, it's a nice transition into the financial crime world. Many of you may have seen a takedown that the OPP did on a large internet-based scam where there were over 220 victims. These are individuals that most of them were in their late 60s, mid 70s to mid 80s. Over 220 of them lost their homes, their life savings, all of their financial means. And I think it's time as a society we stop looking at financial crimes as a white-collar crime, as a property crime, as a victimless crime. Can you imagine losing your life savings, losing all the equity in your home, losing all your securities, and you still have to put food on your table, you still have to have a place to live? You have been victimized to the greatest extent. And we are seeing this crime increase again through the leveraging of technology. A 250% increase in total dollar loss, a 21% increase in the number of victims, and a 34% increase in the number of frauds reported. Many of you, I know I receive calls every week. They're calling the cell phone of the OPP commissioner. If you do not pay $250 right away, CBSA is coming to arrest you on an immigration warrant. If you don't pay your back taxes, we're going to be at your front door to arrest you. We are all receiving these calls every day. But where we need to be so careful is technology is getting more advanced. Chief Demke, Deputy Larkin, Chief Van Dyke, we were all at the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Summit earlier last month. And we heard from Chief Adam Palmer from Vancouver, who shared with us an incident, which is advanced generated AI technology. A Fortune 500 international company, for a CEO that was leading this company, she was called into a virtual meeting, which we all get last minute. She gets the meeting request to meet with her president and to meet with the president of the board of directors. She joins the meeting in progress, and she's watching her president and the chair of her board have a discussion along with two other parties. And they are talking about a business deal and a business transaction. And as the conversation closes up, the president turns to her on this virtual platform and says, transfer $2 million to this particular account. She ends the meeting, she does the first of two transfers, and then she thinks, hang on a second, the president was wearing a pair of eyeglasses that I have not seen him wear in a little while. And she started to get that uncomfortable feeling. So she picked up the phone and she called the president and she said, President, I've just transferred the first $1.4 million and I'm about to transfer the rest. And he says, what are you talking about? I was just on a video call with you, the chair of the board, gives him the entire story. I was not on that video meeting, and that was all AI-generated technology. It takes 30 seconds of your voice to be captured, to be regenerated, and be able to translate into any form of conversation. So these grandparent scams, a phone call, someone claiming that they need your assistance, a family, a loved one, a colleague, this changes the game for all of us. So please, if you're asked to send any money electronically, by any means, please ensure that you are taking steps to verify that request before you transfer any money. Something that I can't let pass, and I added this slide because I became aware that what I would call the founding fathers of the Regional Municipality of York Traffic Safety Strategy were going to be here tonight. And despite the passage of 24 years, traffic safety continues to be a #1 issue for all Canadians. We know that impaired driving continues to be the #1 criminal cause of death in Canada, which is amazing when you think about it. You know, the amount of attention, rightfully so, that we focus on gun crime and other violent crimes, yet more people are killed every year at the hands of an impaired driver, and very seldom does anyone hear anything about that. It continues to be an issue, but closely following behind now is the distracted driving, cell phones, right? No long, you would think that after the period of time that the provincial legislation has been in effect, you would not see people texting, driving, talking. We're still seeing it every day. Something that, as Ontarians, we all need to be committed to making a difference in. Last year alone, we saw almost a 10% increase in the number of arrests we made as the provincial police, with over 11,000 people arrested for impaired driving last year. Organized crime, something that Senior Deputy Commissioner Brian Larkin does a tremendous job stewarding on behalf of all police services across this country when it comes to the transnational reach of organized crime. And Carl Noel spent a decade at Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario providing leadership at a provincial level in this very area. For those that haven't had an opportunity to be briefed yet on the current status of organized crime, you may be surprised to know that Canadian organized crime groups are now active in 72 countries worldwide. That's almost a 40% increase from 2 years prior. So the globe continues to get smaller for all of us to travel, but it also continues to get smaller for these criminal networks who perpetrate their crimes. They are still centered around everything they were back when Jean Carrique and Army LaBarge was leading the intelligence unit at York Regional Police. The main driver is illicit drugs. It's cocaine, it's methamphetamine, it's fentanyl. Money laundering is the piece that ties it all together. We need to get to the proceeds of crime to actually have an impact on these criminal organizations. We've talked about the firearms, human commodities. Human trafficking is happening at a rate unprecedented worldwide, and in our own country, and in our own communities, and in the hotels that you're all staying in when you go on vacation. Be alive to it, be alert to it. If you see something suspicious, somebody that looks as though they may be being forced to go somewhere against their will or uncomfortable with the position that they're in, please do us a favor. Give us a call. I would consider that a reason to call 911, and I can assure you that we will gladly respond to that and investigate that incident. And of course, vehicle theft, something that has been in the forefront of the media for quite some time now. And we'll talk a little bit about auto theft, but I just want to cap off the conversation around drugs with we need to maintain a focus on law enforcement. Yes, social programmings are important. We will not arrest our way out of this problem. Harm reduction strategies are essential, but things like safe supply are not working. Law enforcement has an extremely important role to play. Every day, from January the 1st to the end of March in this country, every day, 21 people died of an opiate overdose. And it is getting worse. So please, let's not lose sight on the fact that we've got a shared responsibility here to look after our vulnerable populations, to ensure that those that have substance abuse issues and addiction issues receive the health care that they need, but that your law enforcement representatives are enforcing the laws for those who would traffic in these drugs and take advantage of these vulnerable populations. Between 2021 and 2023, we saw almost a 50% increase in stolen automobiles in the province of Ontario, and a 78% increase in violent carjackings in the Greater Toronto area. There are many of my colleagues in this room today including Deputy Solicitor General D. Tomaso, have spent an enormous amount of time with the provincial government, with the federal government, with auto manufacturers, with insurance industry, with Canadian Border Services Agency, all working together to find solutions that will work towards limiting the opportunities for these criminal enterprises, to reduce the profits that are available to them. The province invested substantially in the Provincial Auto Theft and Towing Task Force, which has had a positive impact on protecting our communities from these crimes. And something that I think is very worthwhile mentioning is back in the fall, collaborative effort between Toronto Police, OPP, York, Peel, and Durham and Halton was the Provincial Carjacking Task Force, which really helped stem the tide of these carjackings. And actually, I think I know the analyst that might have worked on that. Amy, didn't you have something to do with that?
Not at all.
Okay. But rest assured, we are making some progress. I think you should be pretty proud of your police to see that in the province, almost 1,000 vehicles have been seized and recovered for Ontarians. We had arrested 155 people, and nationally we're starting to see the trend decrease. We're a far, far, far cry from having this problem solved, but it is headed in the right direction. And I know that our Deputy Solicitor General continues to have meetings with the federal government to ensure technology is placed at our borders, at the Port of Montreal, to ensure that containers are being scanned, that procedures are changed so manifests can't be changed just prior to things being shipped out of the country, that it must be registered 72 hours in advance and it cannot be changed. Resources are increased at the ports, and that if we can close down the ports, those vulnerabilities, we can start to have greater impact in our local communities. This is a video that is worth paying attention to. That's an plainclothes OPP officer's car coming across a parking garage in the city of Toronto during the carjacking task force, and those are the offenders that refused to stop for the officers on that evening. Thankfully, no officers were hurt in that interaction, but unfortunately, that is just one of many pieces of video evidence that we have collected over the last 10 months, where officers are being rammed in cruisers, being run at outside of their cruisers, their lives being put at risk. And you all know, if our police officers are not safe, our communities cannot be safe. I pause for just a brief moment because I don't know if there's ever been a time in our recent history where we've seen this number of armed conflicts around the globe. And I know that Chief Labarge, many years ago at the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, advocated for a global policing committee, an international committee that would look at global events and allow police leaders in this country to plan locally for their impacts. And my compliments to Chief Demke, who for a full year now, since October the 7th, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel and the ensuing Middle Eastern war that has resulted, Chief, you have spent countless days, weekends, evenings in living rooms, in synagogues, in mosques, assuring the most diverse population in this country, the highest concentration of Jewish population in this country, that their safety and their security is your priority. And thank you for representing policing in such a strong way and doing the best that you can to ensure that those communities feel valued, feel respected, and know that their safety and security is in fact our priority. These things in a reduced space, technology has made our world so small. The advent of technology has allowed for misinformation, disinformation, propaganda that inspires what could be lone wolf attacks, or even entities who want to be part of criminal extremist groups or terrorist organizations. And I will highlight some tremendous work by the RCMP here shortly. But there are other things that are playing out in our communities, influences from around the globe, where you're seeing civil unrest, civil disobedience. Just today alone, the OPP were shoulder to shoulder with Toronto Police I think we've got Peel Police, York Police, all lending a hand. The OPP is in Ottawa today. This is a regular occurrence almost every weekend, week in and week out. Things like the attack on the US Congress. That had an impact here in Canada. That is one of the energies behind the Freedom Convoy in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Right-wing extremism and global climate issues are all global impacts that are playing out.
Truckers' protest has taken over the capital.
Mayor is calling this the city's most serious emergency.
Ottawa has declared a state of emergency after more than a week of COVID-19 protests.
Tonight, after 3 weeks of paralyzing downtown Ottawa, police in riot gear taking on the so-called Freedom Convoy protesters.
After weeks of waiting, Mounties and Coots moved in overnight. What they found disturbing. Long guns.
I'm Sean O'Shea in Windsor, Ontario, at the Ambassador Bridge. Police here involved in dealing with this blockade.
The annual Walk with Israel event drew heightened security and protests along the 5-kilometer walk.
Police say, despite the high tensions on both sides, a major incident was avoided.
Protesters have set up these camps at the University of Calgary.
Police moving in using force to remove students and their supporters.
Let's get to a McGill school building in Montreal where pro-Palestinian protesters had barricaded themselves only to be pushed out by police.
Protesters camping at Montreal's Victoria Square. Police in riot gear marched through the downtown park early this morning. They removed the tents and told protesters to go home.
Way, I think, in 1 minute or less to capture what our officers are dealing with day in and day out in our local communities that are really global issues that we are managing here in Canada. And we do recognize that lawful protest is not only something that is embedded in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, but it is also an extremely important outlet because people need to be able to peacefully and lawfully express their grievances, their concerns. This is paramount to maintaining public safety. And in countries around the world where that opportunity is not provided and it cannot be facilitated safely, this is where you see the increased risk of terrorism and extremism. And we are not immune from those risks here in Canada. My compliments to Commissioner Duham and Senior Deputy Commissioner Brian Larkin. Over the past 6 months since December, I guess we're at 8 months now, Brian, we have seen 6 arrests that I truly do believe, had the RCMP not had the capability, the capacity, and the reach that they do, that these 6 arrests that are profiled on this screen very likely could have led to an act of terrorism or extremism that would have put people in grievous harm. So Brian, on behalf of all Canadians, our appreciation to you, the Commissioner, and all the members of the RCMP for keeping our nation amongst the safest in the free world. And just to sum up the global impacts on local communities across this country, in the last year we've seen a 32% increase in hate crime. Those groups targeted are mainly based on religion. The Jewish community is the most impacted. It's based on race, and it's based on sexual orientation. Almost 5,000 incidents of hate crime reported across this country last year alone. It is extremely important that the fabric that makes us Canadian, that people can be their authentic selves. They can follow a religion that is tradition, that is their hope, that is their guiding light, that they can be proud of their race, that they can live freely and express themselves within their sexual orientation is also critical and key to who we are as Canadians. And this is why hate crime is something that is of extreme importance to your police and something that we work collaboratively across this country. Every 2 weeks, police leaders across this country meet to discuss the rate of hate crime, issues being experienced in major cities and small communities across our nation, and how collectively, as your police, we deal with it and keep Canada amongst the safest countries in the free world. I'd like to wrap up by saying thank you so very much. I never would have imagined 34 years ago that I would be the recipient of a dinner to recognize me for my policing career that was inspired by a Toronto Police Auxiliary Superintendent who it took me till 12 years of age to figure out that he actually did have a job because he spent so much time volunteering with the Toronto Police Auxiliary. And to be back in almost the very same building because it's been redone, but 34 years ago, almost to the date, before Julie and I got married, my stag dinner was held at the RCMI. So that makes tonight extra special for me, for my family. It's been a pleasure to be surrounded by family, by friends, by colleagues who I respect, and by so many that I attribute all the opportunity that I have had the pleasure of experiencing to your guidance, to your support, to your mentorship. Merci, miigwech.
This has been another in our series of webcasts produced by the Royal Canadian Military Institute in Toronto as a public educational service. You can find news of upcoming events and links to our webcast archives at www.rcmi.org. On behalf of the RCMI, this is Eric Morse saying goodbye for now and thank you for joining us.